The dust cloud rising from the stagecoach wheels was the only warning Eleanor Hartwell had before her entire life changed forever on that scorching afternoon in July of 1876. Eleanor pressed her handkerchief against her lips as the coach lurched to a stop outside the Silver Pine Hotel in Redemption, Colorado, a ramshackle town that had sprung up seemingly overnight when silver had been discovered in the nearby mountains 3 years prior. She had been traveling for 6 days straight from Philadelphia, her back aching from the constant jostling, her dress wrinkled beyond recognition despite her best efforts to maintain some semblance of dignity. The journey west had been necessary but grueling. Her brother Thomas had written months ago about the teaching position available at the new schoolhouse he was helping to establish, and Eleanor had seized the opportunity to escape the suffocating expectations of Eastern society and her mother's relentless pressure to marry the insufferable banker's son who had been courting her. The driver, a grizzled man with tobacco-stained teeth, helped her down from the coach with surprising gentleness. Eleanor's boots hit the dusty street, and she took a moment to steady herself, one hand gripping her carpet bag while the other shielded her eyes from the relentless sun. Redemption was smaller than she had imagined. A single main street lined with wooden buildings that looked as though a strong wind might topple them. Saloon music drifted from somewhere nearby, mingling with the sound of hammering and the occasional shout. She made her way up the hotel's front steps, her legs unsteady after so many days of travel. The lobby was dim and mercifully cooler than the street outside. A large man with a handlebar mustache stood behind the counter, his eyes narrowing as she approached. "Good afternoon," Eleanor said, setting her bag down and attempting a pleasant smile despite her exhaustion. "I need a room for the night. My brother is expecting me tomorrow, but the stage does not continue until morning." The clerk looked her up and down with an expression that made her skin prickle with unease. "You traveling alone, miss?" "I am," she replied, lifting her chin slightly. "Is that a problem?" "Afraid it is." He crossed his thick arms over his chest. "This is a respectable establishment. We do not rent rooms to unaccompanied women. Causes trouble, attracts the wrong sort of attention. House policy." Eleanor felt heat rise to her cheeks that had nothing to do with the temperature. "I assure you, sir, I am a school teacher traveling to meet my brother. I have money to pay for lodging, and I simply need a safe place to rest for one evening." "Policy is policy," the clerk said, his tone brooking no argument. "Try the boarding house 2 streets over. Though I doubt Mrs. Henderson will take you either, seeing as you have got no husband or male relation with you." Panic fluttered in Eleanor's chest. The sun would set in a few hours and she had nowhere to go. Thomas was a full day's ride away in the mining camp of Silver Creek, too far to reach before nightfall. The thought of spending the night on the street in an unfamiliar town filled her with dread. "Please," she said, hating the desperation creeping into her voice, "surely there must be some accommodation we can arrange. I will pay extra." "No amount of money changes the rules, miss. Now if you would kindly—" "She's my betrothed." The deep voice came from behind Eleanor, startling her so thoroughly that she nearly dropped her bag. She spun around to find a tall man standing just inside the doorway, silhouetted against the bright afternoon light. As he stepped forward, she could see him more clearly, a cowboy, by the look of him, with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair that curled slightly at the collar of his worn cotton shirt. His eyes were a striking shade of gray-blue, like storm clouds over the mountains, and they held hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Excuse me?" Eleanor managed. The stranger moved closer, his boots echoing on the wooden floor. He had the easy, confident gait of a man comfortable in his own skin, and despite the travel dust coating his clothes, there was something undeniably compelling about him. "I apologize for the delay, darling," he said smoothly, and Eleanor realized with a start that he was playing some kind of game. The business at the assayer's office took longer than expected. He turned to the clerk before she could formulate a response. "My betrothed and I will take your best room. We have had a long journey, and the lady deserves proper accommodation." He pulled a leather pouch from his pocket and set several silver coins on the counter with a decisive clink. "This should cover the room and any inconvenience." The clerk's demeanor changed instantly at the sight of the money. His eyes lit with greed, and he swept the coins into his palm with practiced efficiency. Of course, my apologies for the confusion. I did not realize the lady was spoken for." He turned to retrieve a key from the board behind him. "Room 7, top of the stairs. It has a nice view of the street." Eleanor's mind raced. She should correct this misunderstanding immediately, should tell the clerk that she had never seen this man before in her life. But the alternative was spending the night on the street, vulnerable and alone. Before she could make a decision, the stranger's hand was at the small of her back, warm even through the layers of her travel dress, gently guiding her toward the staircase. "Thank you kindly," the cowboy said to the clerk, then bent to pick up Eleanor's carpet bag with his free hand. She waited until they were halfway up the stairs out of the clerk's earshot before she hissed, "What exactly do you think you're doing?" "Saving you from a night sleeping in a wagon or worse," he replied quietly, his voice a low rumble that did strange things to her pulse. "You looked like you needed help." "I did not ask for your assistance." "No, but you needed it all the same." He reached the top of the stairs and paused, looking down at her with an expression that was part amusement, part something else she could not quite identify. "Look, miss, I know this is irregular, but Redemption is not the kind of town where a lady should be wandering alone after dark. I meant no disrespect." They reached room 7, and he unlocked the door, pushing it open to reveal a modest but clean space with a bed, a washstand, and a single chair by the window. Eleanor stepped inside cautiously, very aware that she was now alone with a complete stranger in a hotel room. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but when she looked at him, she saw no threat in his eyes, only a kind of patient understanding. "I will sleep somewhere else," he said, as though reading her thoughts. "The livery stable, probably. I just needed the clerk to believe we were traveling together. In the morning you can go your way, and I will go mine. No harm done." Eleanor set her reticule on the small table and turned to face him fully. "Why would you do this for someone you do not even know?" He was silent for a moment, his gaze drifting to the window where the afternoon light painted everything gold. "I had a sister once," he said finally. "She died 5 years ago trying to make her way west alone after our parents passed. If someone had helped her the way I am helping you, she might still be alive." His jaw tightened. "So when I saw you in trouble, I figured I owed it to her memory to step in." The simple honesty of his words struck something deep in Eleanor's chest. "I am so sorry for your loss," she said softly. He shrugged, but she could see the old pain in his eyes. "It was a long time ago." He set her bag down carefully. "The name is Cole Brennan, by the way, since we are betrothed and all." Despite everything, Eleanor felt a smile tug at her lips. "Eleanor Hartwell. And thank you, Mr. Brennan. Truly, I do not know what I would have done if you had not intervened." "Cole," he corrected. "If we are engaged, you should probably use my given name." His mouth quirked in a half smile that transformed his entire face, making him look younger and decidedly more handsome. "Very well, Cole." She found she liked the way his name felt on her tongue. "Though I insist you take the room. You paid for it after all, and I cannot possibly accept such generosity without at least offering you proper accommodation." "Not a chance," Cole said firmly. "A lady needs privacy and safety. I will be fine at the stable. I have slept in worse places, believe me." They stood there for a moment in an oddly comfortable silence, the air between them charged with something Eleanor did not quite understand. She had never been the type to believe in fate or destiny, but there was something about Cole Brennan that made her wonder if perhaps some meetings were meant to happen. "Will you at least let me buy you supper?" she asked impulsively. "It is the least I can do to repay your kindness." Cole hesitated, then nodded slowly. "I would like that. There is a decent restaurant 2 doors down if you're not too particular about fancy table settings." "After 6 days of dried beef and hardtack, anything sounds wonderful," Eleanor admitted. An hour later, after she had washed the worst of the travel grime from her face and hands and changed into a fresh dress, Eleanor met Cole in the hotel lobby. He had cleaned up as well, she noticed, his hair damp and his jaw freshly shaved. Without the layer of trail dust, he was even more striking than she had first thought, with strong features and eyes that seemed to see right through her careful Eastern refinement to something true underneath. The restaurant was small but warm, with checkered tablecloths and the smell of roasting meat filling the air. They took a table by the window, and Eleanor found herself relaxing for the first time since leaving Philadelphia. Cole ordered for both of them, seeming to know instinctively what would be good, and when the food arrived, tender beef, potatoes, and beans that actually had flavor, Eleanor could have wept with gratitude. "So what brings a Philadelphia schoolteacher to Colorado?" Cole asked, cutting into his steak with efficient movements. Eleanor dabbed her mouth with her napkin, surprised he had guessed her origin so accurately. "How did you know I was from Philadelphia?" "Your accent," he said with a slight smile, "and the way you hold yourself. You have got that Eastern city propriety about you, though I suspect there is more to you than fine manners and proper grammar." She felt herself flush with pleasure at his perceptiveness. "My brother Thomas secured a position for me teaching at a new school in Silver Creek. He has been working in the mines there, but he has always believed in education. When he wrote to me about the opportunity, I jumped at the chance." "Running from something?" Cole's question was gentle, not accusatory. Eleanor considered lying, but something about him invited honesty. "My mother had plans for me to marry a man I could not stand, a banker with money and connections, but no soul. I wanted more from life than being some man's ornament, hosting tedious dinner parties and pretending to care about gossip and fashion." "So you chose teaching over security?" Cole nodded approvingly. "That takes courage." "Or foolishness," Eleanor said ruefully. "My mother certainly thinks so. She has not spoken to me since I told her I was leaving." "Then she does not deserve you." Cole's words were firm, matter of fact. "Anyone who would try to cage a spirit like yours has got no understanding of what truly matters." Eleanor's breath caught. No one had ever spoken to her like that before, as though he could see who she truly was beneath the expectations and obligations that had weighed her down for so long. "What about you?" she asked, partly to deflect from the intensity of her emotions. "What brings you to redemption?" Cole leaned back in his chair, his expression growing distant. "I work for a ranch about 30 miles north of here, the Double R. We had some cattle stolen last week, and I have been tracking the thieves. Trail led me here, but it went cold. I figured I would rest up tonight and head back tomorrow." "You are a ranch hand?" "Foreman, actually," he said, and there was no boast in his voice, just simple fact. "Been working the Double R for 4 years now, ever since I drifted into Colorado from Texas. The owner, Robert Ramsey, gave me a chance when I had nothing but the horse I was riding and the clothes on my back. I owe him everything." "You seem young to be a foreman," Eleanor observed, then worried she had been too forward, but Cole just smiled. "I am 26, been working ranches since I was 14 after my parents died. You learn fast when your survival depends on it." 26, only 3 years older than herself. Eleanor felt relief at that, though she was not quite sure why it mattered. They were strangers who would part ways in the morning, nothing more. Except that did not feel entirely true, did it? There was a connection forming between them, delicate as spider silk, but undeniably present, growing stronger with each word they exchanged. They talked through the meal and into the evening, conversation flowing with surprising ease. Cole told her about life on the ranch, about cattle drives and roundups, about the harsh beauty of Colorado winters and the way the mountains looked at sunrise. Eleanor found herself sharing things she had never told anyone. Her secret love of poetry, her fear that she would not be good enough as a teacher, her dream of maybe one day writing a book about the West. "You will be a fine teacher," Cole said with such conviction that she almost believed him. "You have got patience and kindness, and you're not afraid to take risks. Those are the things that matter, not whether you know every grammatical rule by heart." When they finally left the restaurant, the sun had long since set, painting the sky in shades of deep purple and indigo. The street was quieter now, though light and noise still spilled from the saloons. Cole walked Eleanor back to the hotel, his presence beside her both comforting and unsettling in ways she could not quite articulate. At the door to her room, they paused. Eleanor knew she should thank him again and say goodnight, should let him go to the livery stable as planned. But the thought of him sleeping on hay while she had a comfortable bed felt wrong. "This is foolish," she said before she could think better of it. "But the room is large enough, and there is a chair. If you would like to sleep there instead of the stable, I would not object. I trust you." The words came out in a rush, and she felt her cheeks burn. "That is, if you think it would be appropriate, which it probably is not. But you have been so kind and—" "Eleanor." Cole's voice was gentle, stopping her nervous rambling. "Are you sure?" She met his eyes and found herself nodding. "Yes, I am sure." Something flickered in his expression, too quick to identify. "All right, thank you, but I will sleep on the floor. The chair is not big enough, and I have slept on harder surfaces than good pine boards." They entered the room together, and suddenly the space seemed much smaller than it had that afternoon. Eleanor's awareness of Cole sharpened, noticing the way he moved with careful grace, how he turned his back politely while she prepared for bed, changing into her nightgown behind the screen in the corner. When she emerged, modestly covered with a shawl wrapped around her shoulders, she found he had made himself a pallet of blankets on the floor by the door, as far from the bed as possible. "Good night, Eleanor," he said softly, extinguishing the lamp. "Good night, Cole." She lay in the darkness, listening to his breathing slowly even out, and wondered why her heart was still racing. She barely knew this man, and yet she felt safer with him than she had in years, maybe ever. It made no sense, defied all logic and reason, but that did not make it any less true. Sleep was a long time coming. Morning arrived too soon and not soon enough. Eleanor woke to find pale sunlight streaming through the window and Cole already awake, his bedding neatly folded. He was standing by the window looking out at the street below, and for a moment she just watched him, memorizing the line of his shoulders, the way the light caught in his dark hair. "You are awake," he said without turning around, as though he had sensed her gaze. "Yes." She sat up, pulling the blanket around herself. "Well, what time is it?" "Just past 6. The stage will not leave for another 2 hours." He finally turned to face her, and his expression was carefully neutral. "I will head out soon. Need to get back to the ranch." Eleanor felt something sink in her chest, a heaviness that made no sense. Of course. They had breakfast together at the same restaurant, but the easy conversation of the night before felt strained now, weighted by the impending goodbye. Eleanor picked at her eggs, appetite gone, while Cole methodically worked through his food with the efficiency of a man used to fueling his body without much thought to enjoyment. When they finally stood outside the hotel, Eleanor's trunk already loaded onto the waiting stagecoach, she found herself at a complete loss for words. "How did you thank someone for changing your life in the span of a single evening?" "I will never forget your kindness," she said finally, the words feeling inadequate, but true. Cole looked down at her, and for a moment she thought she saw the same regret she felt reflected in his eyes. "You take care of yourself, Eleanor Hartwell. I hope you find everything you are looking for in Silver Creek." He tipped his hat to her, a gesture both formal and intimate, then turned to walk toward the livery stable where his horse was waiting. Eleanor watched him go, her throat tight with emotions she did not understand and could not name. After about 20 paces, he stopped. Then, to her shock, he turned around and walked back with quick, determined strides. "This is probably the most foolish thing I have ever done," Cole said when he reached her. "And God knows I've done some foolish things, but I need to say this before you leave, and I spend the rest of my life wondering what if." Eleanor's heart began to pound. "Say what?" "I felt something last night, something I have never felt before, not in all my 26 years, and I think you felt it too." His eyes searched hers, intense and hopeful and vulnerable all at once. "I know it is crazy. We have known each other less than a day, but I have learned that time is not always the measure of truth. Sometimes you just know." "Know what?" Eleanor whispered. Though she thought she understood, thought she felt the same impossible, improbable thing, that I do not want to let you go. That maybe, just maybe, whatever this is between us could be something real, something worth exploring. He took a breath. Silver Creek is not that far from the Double R. I could visit, if you would allow it. We could write to each other, get to know each other properly, and if, after a few months, you find that I'm not completely unbearable, maybe we could see where this leads. Eleanor felt tears prick her eyes, but they were good tears, hopeful tears. I felt it too, she admitted. Last night, this morning, even now. Like something in me recognized something in you. The smile that broke across Cole's face was like sunrise. Is that a yes? Yes, Eleanor said, laughing through her tears. Yes, you can visit. Yes, we can write. Yes to all of it. The stagecoach driver called out that they were leaving in 5 minutes, shattering the perfect bubble of the moment. Cole reached out and took Eleanor's hand, his calloused palm warm against hers. I will come to Silver Creek in 2 weeks, he promised. I will ask your brother properly for permission to court you. Do this right. I look forward to it, Eleanor said, then impulsively stretched up on her toes and pressed a quick kiss to his cheek. His skin was warm and smelled of soap and leather and something indefinably him. She climbed into the stagecoach in a daze, and as it pulled away, she looked back to see Cole standing in the street, his hand raised in farewell. She waved until he was lost to distance and dust, her heart simultaneously breaking and soaring. The remaining journey to Silver Creek passed in a blur. Eleanor could barely focus on the landscape rolling by, her mind constantly replaying every moment with Cole, analyzing every word, every look. She had always been practical, level-headed, the sensible one in her family. Falling for a cowboy she had known for less than 24 hours was the opposite of sensible. But oh, it felt right in a way nothing else ever had. Thomas was waiting for her when the stage pulled into Silver Creek, and his welcoming embrace was exactly what she needed. Her brother looked good, healthier and happier than he had been back east, his face tanned from outdoor work and his eyes bright with enthusiasm as he showed her around the small mining town that would be her new home. The schoolhouse was a simple one-room building, but it was clean and solid, and Eleanor felt a thrill of possibility when she stepped inside. Thomas had arranged for her to board with a widow named Mrs. Patterson, a kind woman in her 50s who welcomed Eleanor warmly and showed her to a comfortable room with a view of the mountains. The first week passed quickly as Eleanor threw herself into preparing for the school term that would start in September. She met the families whose children would be her students, memorized names and faces, developed lesson plans and curriculum. The work was absorbing and fulfilling, exactly what she had hoped for. But in the quiet moments, especially at night, her thoughts turned to Cole. She wondered if he was thinking of her too, if he would truly keep his promise to visit, or if the magic of their meeting had been nothing but a fleeting dream that would fade with time and distance. On the 14th day, Eleanor was walking back from the general store when she heard hoofbeats behind her. She turned and felt her heart stop. Cole sat astride a handsome bay gelding, dust-covered and travel-worn, but smiling at her with such joy that she felt it echo in her own chest. He dismounted in one fluid motion and covered the distance between them in 3 long strides. "Hello, Eleanor." "You came," she breathed. "I promised. Did I not?" He took off his hat, turning it nervously in his hands. "I have been thinking about you every day since redemption, wondering if I had imagined how I felt, if maybe I had built it up in my mind to be more than it was. But seeing you now, I know I did not. If anything, I remembered it wrong. You are even more beautiful than I recalled." Eleanor felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I thought about you too, constantly." "Good." Cole's smile widened. "That is very good. Now where might I find your brother? I have a request to make of him." Thomas, to his credit, did not laugh at Cole when the cowboy formally asked permission to court his sister, despite the unusual circumstances of their meeting. Instead, he invited Cole to dinner, where he proceeded to ask pointed questions about Cole's prospects, his character, and his intentions. Eleanor, mortified, tried to intervene several times, but both men waved her off. By the end of the meal, Thomas was nodding approvingly. "You seem like a good man, Brennan, and my sister is a fine judge of character. You have my blessing, provided Eleanor wishes it." "I do," Eleanor said firmly. And so the courtship began in earnest. Cole visited every Sunday, the one day he could typically get away from ranch duties. They would walk together through Silver Creek, talking about everything and nothing, their conversations ranging from the profound to the mundane. He met Mrs. Patterson, who took one look at him and declared him a keeper. Eleanor introduced him to the families of her students, and Cole charmed them all with his quiet courtesy and obvious devotion to her. The summer weeks melted into each other, sweet and golden and perfect. Cole taught Eleanor to ride properly, not the side saddle trot she had learned as a girl, but really ride, feeling the power of the horse beneath her and the wind in her face. She read him poetry on lazy afternoons lying in the shade of cottonwood trees by the creek, and watched his face transform with wonder at the words. They learned each other's histories, the joys and sorrows that had shaped them. Cole spoke more about his sister Sarah, about the guilt he still carried over her death, and Eleanor held his hand and told him it was not his fault, that he could not have known or stopped it. She told him about the loneliness of her childhood, always feeling like she did not quite fit in the rigid society her mother prized, and Cole promised her that she would never have to pretend with him. "I love you exactly as you are," he said one Sunday in August, the words simple and devastating in their honesty. They were sitting by the creek, Eleanor's head resting on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. "Every stubborn, brilliant, beautiful part of you." Eleanor turned to look up at him, her heart in her throat. "I love you too. I think I have loved you since you stepped out of the shadows in that hotel and claimed me as your betrothed." Cole's eyes darkened with emotion, and then he was kissing her. Gentle at first, and then with increasing passion, his hand cradling the back of her head. Eleanor melted into him, into the rightness of his touch, tasting possibility and promise on his lips. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Cole rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he said. "I know it has only been a few months, and I do not have much to offer you yet. But I am working on buying some land from Mr. Ramsey, starting my own small ranch. It will take time, and the first few years will be hard, but I swear I will build us a good life. I will love you every day with everything I have. Please say yes." Eleanor cupped his face in her hands, her vision blurred with happy tears. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." They were married in October, just after the school term began, in a simple ceremony at Silver Creek's small church. Eleanor wore a dress of cream silk that Mrs. Patterson had helped her sew, and Thomas walked her down the aisle with undisguised pride. Cole wore a new suit, the first he had ever owned, and when he saw Eleanor, his expression of awe and love made her feel like the most beautiful woman in the world. The reception was a lively affair, with half the town turning out to celebrate. They danced until Eleanor's feet ached, and Cole held her close, whispering promises in her ear that made her blush and laugh. When they finally left for the small cabin on the edge of town that Cole had rented for them, the stars were out in full force, a glittering canopy overhead. Their wedding night was tender and sweet, full of nervous laughter and gentle exploration. Cole treated her like something precious, kissing away her uncertainties and showing her with his touch how deeply he cherished her. Eleanor had been raised to think of marital relations as a duty, but with Cole it was nothing like that. It was connection, communion, a physical expression of the love that bound their souls. Afterward, lying tangled together in the moonlight, Eleanor traced lazy patterns on Cole's chest and marveled at how her life had changed. 6 months ago, she had been a lonely, restless woman trapped in a life she did not want. Now she was a wife, a teacher, a pioneer building a new life in the West with a man she loved beyond reason. "What are you thinking?" Cole asked, his fingers combing gently through her unbound hair. "That I am happy," Eleanor said simply. Happier than I ever imagined being. Cole pressed a kiss to her forehead. Good. That's all I ever want for you. The first year of their marriage was hard in many ways, but wonderful in others. Eleanor taught during the day, finding profound satisfaction in watching her students grow and learn. Cole worked long hours at the Double R and spent his spare time clearing and preparing the land he was buying for Mr. Ramsay, 1 acre at a time. Money was tight, luxuries non-existent, but they had each other, and that seemed like enough. In the evenings, they would sit together in their small cabin, Eleanor grading papers while Cole carved or mended tack, and talk about their dreams for the future. They wanted a real ranch someday with cattle and horses and a big house where they could raise a family. They wanted to build something lasting, something meaningful. Sometimes I cannot believe you are mine, Cole said one night in January, the wind howling outside while they huddled close to the fire. That I was lucky enough to be in that hotel at exactly the right moment? I think about that too, Eleanor admitted. What if you had arrived 5 minutes later? What if you had not stepped in? But I did, Cole said, pulling her closer. And you said yes. And now here we are. Here we are, Eleanor echoed, contentment warm in her chest. Spring brought new challenges. A late freeze damaged some of the crops the townspeople depended on, and money became even tighter. But the community pulled together, sharing what they had, and Eleanor saw the true spirit of the West. People helping each other survive and thrive against the odds. In May, Eleanor discovered she was pregnant. The realization came slowly, a missed monthly course followed by morning queasiness and a sudden aversion to the smell of coffee. When Mrs. Patterson gently suggested she might be expecting, Eleanor sat down hard in the kitchen chair, overwhelmed by a rush of emotions too complex to name. She told Cole that evening, her hands shaking as she took his from across the dinner table. I have something to tell you. I am going to have a baby. Cole's eyes went wide, his mouth falling open in shock. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his face, growing until it seemed to light up the entire room. We are having a baby? Yes, Eleanor confirmed, laughing at his expression. He was out of his chair in an instant, sweeping her up in his arms and spinning her around, whooping with joy. When he set her down, there were tears on his cheeks. We are going to be parents, Eleanor. We are going to have a family. That night, Cole lay with his head on her still, flat stomach, talking to the baby in a soft, wondering voice. Eleanor ran her fingers through his hair and felt love so intense it was almost painful. They had built something real and true from a chance encounter, and now they were creating new life, a testament to everything they had found together. The pregnancy was mostly easy, though the summer heat made Eleanor uncomfortable, and teaching became exhausting. She stopped working at the end of July, 2 months before the baby was due, and spent her days sewing tiny garments and preparing the cabin for their new arrival. Cole became almost comically protective, hovering whenever she so much as reached for something, insisting she rest constantly. I am pregnant, not made of glass, Eleanor told him with fond exasperation. I know, but I cannot help worrying, Cole replied. You and this baby are my whole world. Their son was born on a crisp October evening, exactly 1 year after their wedding. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Eleanor thought she could not bear it, but Mrs. Patterson and the town's midwife coached her through, and Cole held her hand the entire time, his presence an anchor in the storm. When the baby finally arrived, squalling and red-faced and perfect, Cole wept openly. He is beautiful, he said in awe, touching one tiny fist with a gentle finger. He is perfect. They named him Samuel Thomas Brennan, after Cole's father and Eleanor's brother. From the first moment, Cole was a devoted father, rising for middle-of-the-night feedings even though he had to work early, changing diapers without complaint, spending any free moment just staring at his son in wonder. I never knew I could feel like this, he told Eleanor one night, Samuel sleeping peacefully in his arms, like my heart is walking around outside my body. Eleanor understood exactly what he meant. Motherhood had transformed her in ways she was still discovering, deepening her capacity for love and fear in equal measure. Watching Cole with their son only made her love him more if that was possible. The years that followed were full of growth and change. The small ranch Cole had been working toward finally became reality. By Samuel's second birthday, they had 40 acres and a small herd of cattle. It was not much compared to the big spreads, but it was theirs, built with their own sweat and dreams. They moved out of the cabin and into a new house Cole built, with help from Thomas and some of the other men from town. It was simple, just 4 rooms, but it had glass windows and a real stove, and to Eleanor, it was a palace. She planted flowers around the porch and vegetables in a garden out back, making the place a true home. Samuel grew into a bright, energetic boy with his father's dark hair and his mother's curiosity. When he was 3, Eleanor discovered she was pregnant again. This time the news came with less shock and more quiet joy, a sense of their family expanding in exactly the right way. Their daughter was born in December of 1880 during the first snowfall of winter. The birth was easier than Samuel's had been, and when Eleanor held the tiny girl for the first time, she marveled at her delicate features, the rosebud mouth, and wisps of reddish gold hair. "She looks like you," Cole said softly, his arm around Eleanor as they gazed at their daughter together. They named her Sarah Grace, for Cole's sister and for the grace that had brought them together all those years ago. Samuel, initially skeptical of the squirming bundle that had invaded his home, quickly became fiercely protective of his baby sister, always wanting to help with her care. Life settled into a rhythm that was sometimes challenging but always fulfilling. The ranch slowly prospered as Cole proved himself a skilled cattleman and horse trainer. Eleanor took on a few private pupils teaching in the mornings, while Mrs. Patterson watched the children, finding she could balance motherhood and her love of education. They had struggles, of course. There were lean years when drought withered the grass, and they had to sell off part of the herd. There were illnesses that terrified them, especially when Samuel contracted pneumonia one winter, and they spent 3 days thinking they might lose him. There were disagreements and frustrations, moments when the pressures of building a life felt overwhelming. But through it all, the foundation they had built in redemption held strong. They talked through their problems, supported each other through hardships, and never forgot the unlikely miracle of how they had found each other. On hard days, Eleanor would think back to that moment in the hotel lobby when Cole had stepped forward and claimed her as his betrothed, and she would remember that they had been choosing each other ever since. By 1885, the ranch had grown to 200 acres with a healthy herd and a reputation for quality stock. Cole hired on 2 ranch hands, young men eager to learn the trade, and began planning an expansion of the house. Samuel was 7, already learning to ride and help with ranch chores, his laughter a constant presence around the property. Sarah was 5, sweet-natured and clever, with a particular talent for finding trouble in the most creative ways. Eleanor sometimes taught at the school in Silver Creek when the regular teacher was ill or overwhelmed, and she had become a pillar of the community, organizing socials and helping new families settle into the area. She corresponded regularly with Thomas, who had married a nice woman named Catherine and had 2 children of his own. One evening in June, Cole and Eleanor sat on the porch after the children were in bed, watching the sun set over the mountains they had come to love. The air was sweet with the scent of the roses Eleanor had planted, and somewhere a meadowlark was singing its evening song. "Do you ever regret it?" Cole asked suddenly. "Giving up the life you could have had back east? You could have married that banker, had an easier life?" Eleanor turned to look at him, this man who had given her everything that mattered. Silver threaded through his dark hair now, and lines crinkled at the corners of his eyes from years of sun and smiling. But to her he was as handsome as the day they met. More so because she knew him now, knew the depths of his kindness and the strength of his love. "Not for a single moment," she said firmly. "That was not living, Cole. That was existing, pretending to be someone I was not to fit into a world I did not belong in. Here with you, I am exactly who I am meant to be." Cole took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "I think about that day in Redemption sometimes, how I almost did not go into that hotel. I was planning to just ride on, find a place to camp outside town, but something made me go in, and there you were, fighting for your dignity with that clerk." "Providence," Eleanor said softly. "Maybe," Cole agreed. "Or maybe we were just supposed to find each other, and the universe was making sure we did not miss our chance." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to emerge, the sky deepening from blue to indigo to black. Inside the house, Eleanor could hear Samuel giggling about something, and then Sarah's higher voice joining in. The sounds of their children, happy and safe and loved. "We have built a good life," Cole said. "We have," Eleanor agreed. "We really have." The years continued to unfold, bringing new joys and challenges. Samuel grew into a fine young man, as skilled with horses as his father, and with a good head for business. At 18, he announced his intention to start his own horse breeding operation on a portion of the ranch's land, and Cole could not have been prouder. Sarah developed a passion for teaching, often accompanying Eleanor to the schoolhouse and helping with the younger children. She had her father's gentle way with people and her mother's sharp mind, a combination that made her beloved in the community. When she was 16, a young rancher's son began courting her, and though Cole grumbled about her being too young, Eleanor just smiled and reminded him that she had been 23 when they married, and Sarah had plenty of time. In 1892, Cole and Eleanor celebrated their 15th anniversary. The ranch was thriving now, one of the most successful in the area. They had built the bigger house Cole had dreamed of, with room enough for their growing family and the grandchildren they hoped would come someday, but their favorite place was still the porch, where they sat together in the evenings, hands intertwined, watching the land they had built together. 15 years, Eleanor mused. Sometimes it feels like a lifetime, and sometimes it feels like yesterday that you walked into that hotel and changed my life. Our betrothal certainly lasted longer than either of us expected that day, Cole said with a grin. Eleanor laughed, the sound carrying across the twilight air. I never thanked that clerk properly. If he had not been such a stubborn fool about his policies, we might never have met. I would have found you somehow, Cole said with certainty. You were meant to be mine, Eleanor Brennan. I felt it the moment I saw you. I love you, Eleanor said, the words as fresh and true as they had been when she first spoke them. And I love you, Cole replied, pulling her close. More than I did yesterday, less than I will tomorrow. The sun dipped below the mountains, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold. Somewhere in that vast Colorado landscape, the stagecoach road still ran through Redemption, past the Silver Pine Hotel where two strangers had become something more. The clerk was long retired, the hotel under new management, but the story lived on, told and retold by those who remembered or had heard it passed down. The tale of the school teacher who was refused lodging and the cowboy who claimed her as his betrothed, not knowing that one impulsive lie would become the truest thing he ever said. The story of how a moment of kindness had blossomed into a lifetime of love, built on honesty and respect, and the simple choice to be brave enough to reach for happiness when it appeared. Samuel eventually married a rancher's daughter from a neighboring property, expanding the Brennan holdings and filling the big house with the laughter of grandchildren. Sarah did become a teacher, taking over the Silver Creek School when Eleanor finally retired at 60. She married a surveyor who worked for the railroad, and they built a house just down the road from the ranch, keeping the family close. Cole and Eleanor grew old together, their hair turning silver, their hands gnarled from decades of hard work, but their love never dimmed. They weathered the changing West, seeing it transform from wild frontier to settled land, from territories to states. They saw progress and loss, held tight to each other through celebrations and sorrows. On their 40th anniversary, surrounded by children and grandchildren in the house Cole had built for her, Eleanor looked at her husband and felt the same flutter in her chest that she had experienced in that hotel lobby so many years ago. Age had marked them both, but it had not diminished what they were to each other. "Best decision I ever made," Cole said, as though reading her thoughts, stepping forward that day. "Best decision I ever made was saying yes when you asked to court me," Eleanor replied. Their eldest grandson, a bright boy of 10 named Cole Jr., piped up from where he sat cross-legged on the floor. "Grandpa, tell us again about how you met Grandma." Cole and Eleanor exchanged a glance, their eyes twinkling with shared memory. They had told this story dozens of times to their children and now their grandchildren, and it never got old. "Well," Cole began, settling back in his chair and pulling Eleanor's hand into his, "it was the summer of 1876, and I was tracking cattle thieves through Colorado. I rode into a town called Redemption, dusty and tired and looking for nothing but a decent meal and a place to rest my horse. But when I walked into the hotel, I found something far more valuable than rest." Eleanor listened to her husband tell their story, watching the faces of their grandchildren light up with interest and delight. She thought about the scared young woman she had been fleeing an unwanted marriage and an unhappy life, with no idea what the future held. She thought about the grief-haunted cowboy who had still found room in his heart to help a stranger, honoring the memory of a sister he had lost. Neither of them could have known, in that moment of decision, how one small act of courage would ripple outward through time, creating a family, a legacy, a love story that would be passed down through generations. But that was the beautiful mystery of life, was it not? You made your choices, took your leaps of faith, and trusted that the path would unfold as it should. As Cole's voice washed over her, warm and familiar after 40 years of marriage, Eleanor Brennan closed her eyes and smiled. She had been refused lodging for traveling without a man, and a cowboy had stepped forward to claim her as his betrothed. It had been a lie that became truth, a pretense that became reality, a momentary impulse that became forever, and she would not change a single moment of it. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting dancing shadows on the walls of the home they had built together. Outside, the Colorado wind whispered through the pines, carrying with it the promise of tomorrow. Their story was complete, a circle closed, a journey finished. But the love that had sparked in a hotel lobby all those years ago burned as bright as ever, a beacon that would guide their family for generations to come. "And that," Cole finished, his eyes finding Eleanor's across the room, "is how your grandmother became the most important person in my life." "That is so romantic," their granddaughter Sarah, named for her aunt, sighed dramatically. "It is the truth," Eleanor said gently. "Sometimes the most romantic stories are the true ones, the ones where people simply choose to be kind and brave and open to possibility." As the evening wore on and the family eventually dispersed to their various homes, Cole and Eleanor found themselves alone on the porch once more, as they had been on so many nights throughout their marriage. The stars were brilliant overhead, the same stars that had watched over them since the beginning. 40 years, Cole murmured, his arm around Eleanor's shoulders, her head resting against his chest where she could hear the steady beat of his heart. 40 years, Eleanor agreed, and I love you more now than I did at the start. How is that possible? Cole asked, wonder in his voice. Because love is not static, Eleanor said thoughtfully. It grows and changes and deepens with every shared joy and weathered sorrow. The man I fell in love with in Redemption was wonderful, but the man I know now, after 40 years of life together, is infinitely more precious. I know your heart, Cole Brennan, and it is the finest thing I have ever known. Cole turned and kissed her forehead, then her lips, soft and sweet. You gave me a family, Eleanor, a purpose, a home. Before you, I was just drifting, existing, but not really living. You changed everything. They sat together as the night deepened, two souls who had found each other against impossible odds and built a life that exceeded every dream. The ranch was quiet around them. The cattle settled, the horses drowsing in their stalls, the next generation sleeping peacefully in homes built on land they had claimed and tamed together. It was not the life Eleanor had been raised to expect. Sitting on a porch in Colorado with calloused hands and silver hair, surrounded by the fruits of decades of hard work. But it was better, infinitely better, than anything her younger self could have imagined. It was real and true and earned every moment of happiness paid for with courage and commitment and unwavering love. "Thank you," she whispered into the darkness. "For what?" Cole asked. "For stepping forward that day, for seeing someone in trouble and choosing to help, for asking to court me, for loving me, for building this life with me, for everything." Cole's arms tightened around her. "I should be thanking you. You took a chance on a cowboy with nothing but a good horse and big dreams. You believed in me when I was not sure I believed in myself." "We saved each other," Eleanor said softly. "That is what love does." They stayed there until the night grew cold, and their bones protested sitting too long, then helped each other up with the practiced ease of decades together. Inside, Cole banked the fire while Eleanor turned down the lamps, their movements synchronized without thought or discussion. In their bedroom, they prepared for sleep with the comfortable familiarity of a lifetime shared. Lying in bed, Eleanor curved into Cole's side, her head on his shoulder, their hands clasped together between them. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new joys, as every tomorrow did. But tonight, they had this: peace, contentment, and the bone-deep certainty of being exactly where they belonged. "Sweet dreams, my love," Cole murmured, already half asleep. "Sweet dreams," Eleanor replied. And as sleep claimed them both, two dreamers who had found each other in the Wild West and built a love story for the ages, the stars continued their eternal dance overhead, bearing witness to the enduring power of one impulsive act of kindness that had changed two lives forever. The end came gently for both of them. Many years later, Cole passing first in his sleep at the age of 83, Eleanor following just 6 months later, as though she could not bear to be parted from him for long. They were buried side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch they had built together, their headstones simple but profound. Cole Brennan, beloved husband, father, grandfather. He stepped forward when it mattered. Eleanor Brennan, beloved wife, mother, grandmother. She said yes to possibility. Their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren would visit those graves for generations to come, bringing flowers and stories, keeping the memory alive. The tale of how they met, of the refused lodging and the cowboy's claim and the love that followed became family legend, told and retold until it took on an almost mythical quality. But those who had known them, who had seen them together through the decades, knew that no myth could capture the quiet beauty of their love. The way Cole's eyes had always sought Eleanor first when entering a room, how Eleanor's face had lit up at the sound of Cole's voice even after 50 years of marriage. The small intimacies that defined a life shared, hands held across tables, inside jokes, the comfortable silence of two people who knew each other's hearts. In the end, that was their legacy. Not the ranch they built, or the fortune they amassed, or even the family they created, precious as all those things were. Their true legacy was the proof that love, real and lasting love, was possible. That two strangers could become soulmates, that courage and kindness could change the course of lives, that saying yes to possibility could lead to miracles. The West they had known was gone now, tamed and modernized beyond recognition. But the story remained, a testament to a time when the frontier was wild and hearts were brave, when a woman traveling alone could be refused lodging, and a cowboy's impulsive lie could become the truest words he ever spoke. when two people could look at each other in a dim hotel lobby and somehow know, against all reason and logic, that they had found their forever. And that, more than any other truth, was what endured: the simple, profound, extraordinary power of love to transform everything it touched, leaving the world brighter than it found it, one brave choice at a time.